So note that in our basic course, we are, when we do a hypothesis test, we formulate a null hypothesis and then we make a decision about rejecting or not rejecting the null hypothesis based on what? Based on findings from a simple random sample. Okay, so when we make a decision based on our sample and using our p-value, our decision may be correct or incorrect. Okay, so let's see the possibilities that arise in this situation. So our decision after calculations are either we do not reject the null or we reject the null. And the fact is that the null may be true or it may not be true. So let's look at this situation that the null is true and we did not reject it, and that's really a nice decision. Why? Because, well, we conducted test but we did not want to reject a true null hypothesis, right? Okay, now in here, if null is true and we rejected the null hypothesis, then that's a very bad decision, right? Okay, so in this case what we did, we committed an error, and what the error is that we rejected a true null. So this type of an error is called type 1 error. Okay, now come to this situation where fact is that the null is not true and we do not reject it. So what happens here? We again made a bad decision, right? Okay, and so bad decision is that we failed to reject a false null. Okay, so this error that we have, it's called a type 2 error. Okay, now we look at this situation here where null is not true and it is rejected, or we were successful in rejecting a false null. So that's a good decision. Okay, so once again, when we make our decision regarding testing a hypothesis, we may commit 2 errors. One error could be what? That the null is true and we rejected it, and that's like very undesirable in this situation, and we call it type 1 error. Another error is that the null is not true and we failed to reject it. That is also an error and we call it a type 2 error. Okay, so when we set a level of significance alpha when we formulate the hypotheses and before we take our simple random sample, what we have is that alpha is the maximum probability of committing a type 1 error, because the way you make your decision is that you reject the null. Okay, so you reject the null when only if the p-value is less than how much? Is less than alpha, right? Okay, so that's how we make our decision. Okay, for example, if alpha is say 0.01, okay, then what we do, we are conducting our test in a way that the probability of our committing a type 1 error is no more than 0.01, or in other words, we'll make our decision in a way that the probability of us rejecting a true null is no more than 0.01. Okay.